MacVoices is supported by Eero, the wireless mesh network solution that you need. Visit Eero.com to get yours and use the coupon code MacVoices to receive free overnight shipping. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, there's another event on the horizon that you should be aware of. I'm excited about it, even though I can't attend this year. It is the CMD-D Conference. And before the CMD-D Conference, though, there will be a scripting bootcamp. CMD-D will be all about automation. Will feature former Apple scripting guru Sal Soghoian, and we can get into that a little bit later. But right now, we're here to talk with Ray Robertson. He is going to be conducting the scripting bootcamp the day before CMD-D. Ray, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you for having me on, Chuck.
So CMD-D is, I believe, August 9th in Santa Clara, but the day before that, you are running the scripting bootcamp. And I wanted to find out how the two fit together, what your background is, give people an idea of who you are and what you'll be teaching.
Sure. I'll talk a little bit about the bootcamp first, which is, as you mentioned, the day before. And Sal actually gave it the name Scripting Bootcamp and then asked me to teach it. And then in the publicity, I noticed that he put that Ray is a kind and gentle teacher, which doesn't really fit with the whole bootcamp name. But it does kind of fit with our approach. I had a friend, Anne-Marie Concepcion, tell me, well, maybe you should call it a shoe camp or maybe a sandal camp. Maybe that would be the kind and gentle way. But I've decided that really it works out because this class will really be what I call the middle way, and that it's friendly for beginners, but we do touch on some advanced topics to give people a taste of what is possible, and we even show bugs and troubleshooting, and we discuss things like the wonderful third-party editor Script Debugger to give people exposure to more advanced tools. So it's a one-day beginning intro, but with some advanced topics. And it covers the language of AppleScript, if I haven't made that clear. The automation language on the Mac OS, which I've been using for quite a while. My background is in publishing. I was originally in typesetting on old CompuGraphics systems, and I moved to the Mac in 1985. And moved to automation not long after that. I got into QuickKeys, which is a macro program that you may remember. Still available, I believe. But then soon after that, I began to look for more automation possibilities and landed upon AppleScript. And AppleScript is an amazing technology that comes free on every Mac OS, which allows you to automate tasks. And automation is so important. That's what the whole CMD-D Conference is about. Because what I find with most users is we buy computers, we get into computers to save time. Yet, as we start to use them, we find that we start doing the same things again and again every day. So it's tedious tasks that we keep repeating for our own workflows. But AppleScript allows you to automate those tedious tasks and really can be a lifesaver for individual users or for large companies who need to automate very complicated workflows. So in '97, I went out and started my own company called Scripting Events. We did AppleScript development and AppleScript training for years. With a partner, Shane Stanley, we started some classes called AppleScript Pro Sessions for advanced 5-day AppleScript training. And knew Sal in '97, knew him slightly before he went to work for Apple. And he knew my history as a trainer, so he asked me to come help with this conference, and I'm delighted.
There's a lot there. There's a lot there that I want to get into. And you're right about, we all have these repetitive tasks we do so often. There's so many levels of automation, so many different kinds of automation. Things like the simple text expansion that is built into the Mac OS is a form of automation. Right. AppleScript, I think, candidly, sometimes scares folks because it looks an awful like programming. And I wish they wouldn't be afraid of it. Is there a particular way you plan to try to demystify it for the rank beginner, or maybe that you can encourage people not to be afraid of it here?
Well, it is a kind and gentle program, as Sal said, and we begin with a very basic introduction. And the thing, of course, which makes AppleScript so friendly is it is an English-like language. It uses English-like syntax. And I have this theory on what really separates programmers from end users, if you'd like to hear my own theory.
Yes, please. This should be good.
So on one side, we have programmers over here, very complex languages, very difficult to use, steep learning curve. And on the other end, we have the end users, such as myself. That was my background. I have no programming experience. I was a liberal arts major in political science and English. So end users can become familiar with automation thanks to AppleScript. But going back to the analogy, we had the programmers widely separated from the end users. And the end users know the application, such as Adobe InDesign is a very complex and wide-ranging application, but users know how to use it. And ones who become very familiar with InDesign move over towards the middle, and we call them power users, because they're familiar with almost every feature in a very complex program. Then we have the programmers over here, and those who find programming either too difficult or to take too long to develop, they become scripters, which is kind of a programming light. It's faster to develop, it doesn't take as much study, and the learning curve is still steep, but not as steep as true programming. So we're moving closer. We have the power users and we have the scripters. Well, in between the two, because scripting still takes a while to learn with its unfamiliar syntax, in between the two, Apple created AppleScript. And that's why I do call it the middle way, because it has this familiar English-like syntax, so you already have a head start on understanding it. And the great thing I like about AppleScript for the end users coming in is a lot of end users work in busy production environments. They don't have time to take 6 weeks or 6 months to learn a new programming language. They're working on deadline, typically. With AppleScript, they might work for a day or two in it, write some scripts, not finish, and then not come back to it until a month later. Well, because of the English-like syntax, they're already familiar with it. They can kind of re-engage with the code itself much faster than they were on the programming end in dealing with Objective-C or something like that. The other advantage is really that wide gulf between the programmers and the end users. Typically, the programmers don't know the application. They know their code, they know how to do things, but they're not familiar with what's called the object model of an application, such as a program like InDesign, of course, has documents and pages and text frames and graphic frames within that. The programmer is not as familiar with that, but the end user is. And so I tell people, even if you have no programming background, if you know the application, if you're a power user, you're already halfway there to learning AppleScript because you have that important skill. So AppleScript remains unique in terms of its English-like language. It's been around a long time, but it has saved individuals and companies millions, if not billions, of dollars during that time.
Yeah, I'm familiar with a little bit of that, and some of the stories that about Sal and things that he's been able to accomplish for customers. So it definitely is something powerful. I know there's Automator that is also another Apple technology, but AppleScript, as far as the Mac goes, seems to be the big dog in the room, and it's the one that you want to learn if you're serious about this kind of thing.
Exactly. I mean, Automator is a great technology. It moves closer to the end user and the power user. It has some great pre-built routines. It's kind of like picking pieces of a puzzle and putting them together to automate something. It also has some limitations in the way it does things. AppleScript has a steeper learning curve than Automator, but it is more powerful in what you can do with it. So it really is wonderful that on the Mac, we have all these tools and all these options for automation. I mentioned macro utilities, like Sequencer is a current one that's available that can kind of imitate and record what you do with the keyboard or with the mouse. But you're still having to select objects and act upon them and follow very literal steps. With AppleScript, I can do something like ask for a list of every picture in the document, and then have that list and be able to repeat through it and make changes to each item. And that's the way in which AppleScript is more powerful than Sequencer or other macro utilities, and even more powerful than Automator in the way that it repeats. And also AppleScript has conditional functions. So I can say, if this object exists, do this. If not, do that. And that if-then is at the core of programming, but available in AppleScript, the middle way for you to get great tasks done.
I guess I'm trying to back people into this with something maybe they're more familiar with or get comfortable with. But if you've been using if this, then that, if you have any of the Internet of Things enabled devices and you've been playing with if this, then that, then you are doing some of this already, and you're learning to think that way, that if one thing happens, then something else should happen that you want to have happen.
Great point. And that's an excellent illustration. If you already are familiar with the conditional possibilities of if then that, then you're able to conceptualize the core of AppleScript and how you would work. There's no story about you ask a person, how do you cross the street? And most people would say, oh, you look left and right and then left again, and if it's clear, then you're able to cross the street. Well, what if there is a crosswalk? Now, what if there is a signal? Now, what if there is a signal, but there's an ambulance coming? So what you say to a traditional programmer is, if you can write a 10-page description of how to cross the street, you could be a programmer. Because you're anticipating every bad thing that could happen and every bad environment you could be in and every bad thing a user could do. When you are scripting with AppleScript, you own the street. You know the street and you know the conditions. So you don't have to add as many if-thens when creating your AppleScript because you know the conditions. And because of that, AppleScript itself is much faster to develop.
I love that story because it actually makes me feel much more comfortable with AppleScript, and I'm hoping it'll make some other people feel comfortable with it. The idea that so many of the conditions, and the street example is perfect. You know, you can almost scare yourself away from crossing the street with all that. But with this, okay, I own the street, so I can kind of decide where I want to cross, when, and how. That's a great analogy.
Exactly. And really, if you talk to any programmer, they'll tell you 80% of the time that they spend developing code is spent on things which will only happen 1 to 5% of the time. So with the scripting language, especially with AppleScript, you don't have to program for all those bizarre scenarios because you know what's going to happen. Or you can tell your user, like somebody in your office, only do this and follow these instructions and you'll be okay. And that's really the power of scripting, is putting that type of automation into the hands of the end user who knows the applications and the programs that they're using.
When was the last time you upgraded your Wi-Fi router? Why haven't you? Thought it was too hard? Didn't want to be offline for the time it would take you to figure out the new router? Hate the idea of getting to know yet another complex control panel? If any of those apply, let me tell you about Eero, my new wireless mesh network solution. Yes, I was a little skeptical too. Getting my Eero up and running had me offline about 10 minutes. That's how long it takes just to log into some other router's control panels. Eero accomplishes this by using the power and simplicity of their iOS app to guide you through the process. And the process couldn't be easier. There is exactly one light on the Eero, so you know what it's doing by what color that light is. The only real input Eero needs from you is to name your network, give it a password, and identify what room it's located in. You're up and running. Adding the beacons was even easier, because the Eero finds them automatically, adds them to your network, and asks for their room location. Suddenly, you have a mesh network delivering fast, powerful Wi-Fi to all corners of your house and beyond. No, those beacons aren't extenders. They are actual mesh access points. Who wants to go through all the hassle of extenders when Eero does it better and easier? The new second-generation Eero is responsible for all that power and speed because Eero added a third radio to the system, making it a tri-band system that is twice as fast as before. This is an enterprise-grade Wi-Fi system in your home that takes up less space than your previous router and delivers better coverage and performance. Did I mention the guest network? With just a few taps on the Eero app, you can set up a guest network that gives your friends a totally separate network to connect to. Set it up when you need it or want it, take it down when you don't, or change it with each set of house guests. Did I mention the additional thread radio for connecting low-power devices like your smart light bulbs, smart locks, and all those other smart sensors you're gathering up? Did I mention that Eero can connect over Ethernet in addition to wirelessly in just about any combination you can think of? I love my Eero for all these reasons and more, and I want you to love Eero too. That's why I want you to go right now to Eero.com and order yours. If you do, you get free overnight shipping by using the coupon code MacVoices at checkout. So you can have the Eero experience tomorrow if you start today. So start right now. Eero.com and the code MacVoices gets you free overnight shipping on an Eero and 2 beacons. I promise it will be the best investment you've made in wireless yet. Thanks to Eero for their support of MacVoices. Okay, so you've convinced me that I can learn AppleScript, that this might be worth my time. So what, I know you've talked a little bit in generalities. Can you be a little more specific about what and how you'll be teaching at the Scripting Bootcamp? Should that be viewed as just a way to kind of get into this, or is it kind of, should it be considered in preparation for the next day's CMD-D Conference?
Both, but it really gives you a jump start for working with AppleScript itself. And I'll tell you a little bit about the approach. What is, we explain the basics, and I keep saying we, it really is just myself leading that class. I explain the basics, but then I also provide a whole lot of sample scripts, because you'll find that in learning AppleScript, the most beneficial thing is to have a nice core of sample scripts to look at later and to reuse as you need. And we'll also be looking at things like how to read a dictionary so you can understand the object model of an application that you're trying to automate. But sample scripts are very important. And the other thing that I do is provide follow-up support for class members. I don't want to just teach a one-day course and then say, well, here's some other resources for you, but don't ever talk to me again. Instead, my email's available. We might set up a forum in the future. It's very much just the way that we conducted AppleScript Pro sessions for all those years. Each attendee became a member of a support program later on, a support forum where attendees could talk with each other and the class leaders and get some hints and tips. Because you will need additional help, obviously, beyond a one-day course. But we really want you to learn AppleScript, so we're glad to provide that help.
That's an amazing approach. I know I've gone to plenty of conferences and sessions, and I take tons of notes, and then I come home, and I don't always get to it. Or if I get to it, I get stuck somewhere, and I don't have anybody really to ask. And as a result, I definitely don't get the value out of the conference or the experience that I could and probably should. And so the idea that there will be a forum or a way for you all to communicate, get some of those questions answered and keep on going, that's an excellent benefit to coming to the Scripting Bootcamp.
That really does help. And I also have some unusual advice for beginners that I relay during the class. And that's when you're done with the class, don't go back and start with a simple script. Start with something that's complex that you really need to automate and that will give you the drive and push to continue to automate it. And by taking on that difficult task, then you'll stay focused. And if you're working for a company, you'll probably save your company maybe $10,000 or more in your first script. So that's very helpful to make sure that you've got something you need to work on that will change your work life or change your life on the Mac in terms of automating it. So don't keep it simple to begin with. And the other thing I advise is go ahead and get a Script Debugger, which is a third-party editor for $99. Script Editor is great, and I will be using it during half the class at CMD-D. But for the other half of the class, I will be showing Script Debugger because it gives you the ability to step through a script line by line and see results of what you're doing. And that is so helpful to beginners that I think it should not be missed. And it also gives you some 3 different dictionary views that really help beginners zero in on how an object model for an application works. Because in AppleScript, one of the real challenges is not knowing what to say, but knowing where to direct that command. You have to refer to, let's just use a page model again, since everybody is familiar with that. You have to refer to a paragraph within a text frame, maybe within a page, within a document. And that's the object model. And one of the things that Debugger really helps with is you can explore that object model live and see objects on your page. And then once you find the object that you need to change, you drag and drop it into your script, and it shows you a full reference to that object. So really the kind of getting through how you need to direct your commands is half the struggle with AppleScript. So I try and make sure beginners are aware of all the tools available to help them with that. And I will say this, I've got to say this, Chuck, I have a terrible memory. You know, I can never be a great programmer because I'm more of a creative person. I don't remember things well. And so I need all the tools that I can get to help me reference items and remember items because I'm going to forget when I sleep. You know, it happens. But being a creative developer is very important to understanding what users need and what normal human beings who don't have a photographic memory, how we might struggle with problems. And so that's the way I teach to beginners because I'm still a beginner. I learn new things every class because I'm reminded of what I forgot.
I'm very impressed by the way you're approaching things. I mean, some of it, it's like trying to talk through a page layout program. That if you describe it like you did, your head can start to, or your eyes, I should say, can start to glaze over a little bit. But if you see it, it's like what makes perfect sense, and that's what you're going to get to do here. But I'm really impressed by just the ease of the approach, and it's not you don't sound like oh boy, I'll get in trouble for this, but a typical programmer that are so enthusiastic and they dive deep into the code, and you can't follow them because you're just not trained in it. It makes me feel like now I'm really more disappointed that I can't attend CMD-D and CMD-D Bootcamp because I think actually I could get a whole lot out of it, and it sounds like I know that's exactly your goal, but then the follow up, I mean, and the tools, it sounds like just a perfect approach.
Well, thanks, and it really has to do with the fact that I'm not brilliant. The programmers are; they really are. But I come from the end user background. I have my own struggles. If I go to a training conference, I won't remember half of what is taught. At AppleScript Pro every year, and I'll mention this briefly too, as part of the class we provide a 45-page quick reference to AppleScript. And it's not available elsewhere. It's really a very brief description of the AppleScript language, but it covers some of the more advanced topics without going into a tremendous amount of detail. So almost anyone can read a 40-plus page document. So we provide that in class for people to have in their follow-up work as well. And I found that really effective. And you might think that with only 40 pages, I know the entire quick reference. Every time that I reread it to update it, I remember something that I forgot. And I think, hey, I can use that. Or, hey, I should have been using that all along. But that's how it goes.
That's exactly how it goes. So where can folks go to sign up for this? As we said, it's in August in Santa Clara. Where can they go and how, I mean, you have to ask the question, how much does it cost?
Oh, wow. You're asking me questions that I may not know here. I have to be reminded of the URL is actually CMD-D Conf, CMD-D Conf.com. So CMD-D-Conf.com. And the pricing is available. Once you scroll through that, you'll see it on the Eventbrite page. And let me make sure that there is an early bird pricing still going on through, I think, August the 1st. And I believe, yes, for the Scripting Bootcamp, it's $395. And it's the same for the CMD-D Conference as well. And you are also welcome to choose both days.
Okay, so it's $395 for one, $395 for the other, or
right,
whatever the math is.
Yes.
Total for both. I'm not going to even pretend to try to do it. I'll mess myself up.
A little less than $800.
Yes.
You know, I could quick show you how to write a script to do that math, but I won't do that much.
Okay, very nice, very nice. You got me. Oh, so CMD-D-Conf.com. That's where you want to go, and I'll have it in the show notes, folks, to make sure that you get it. Go and please report back to me as to what you learned, because now I'm excited. I feel like I should go and learn AppleScript in a little more depth than I already know.
Yes, people, please go and then tell Chuck how I did.
Yes. Ray, where can folks find you when you're not teaching the Scripting Bootcamp? Social media presences or websites or whatever?
Yes, I have my Twitter handle is Ray Scripts. I really suck at Twitter, though. I'm not on there very often. I do check in once in a while. I'm more of an email person, and you can contact me in two ways. I have kind of two companies. One is at scriptingmatters.com, so I can be contacted at ray@scriptingmatters.com. And then the second company is one that I acquired from Ben Waldy, who you've interviewed several times. And Ben is now working for Apple. He was a longtime friendly competitor and overall great guy for me. And so when he went to Apple, I took over his company and its management, and its name is Automated Workflows. So you can also contact me at ray@automatedworkflows.com. And I have a blog there which also covers a little bit about the Scripting Bootcamp.
Great. Ray, it's a real pleasure. I hope this is your first trip to MacVoices. I hope it won't be your last, because it's a fascinating subject, and I definitely would like to learn more and expose more folks to it.
Thanks, Chuck. I would be delighted to come back.
Excellent, excellent. Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices, the CMD-D Conference, the Scripting Bootcamp. You really should go. I'm sorry. I'm just deeply sorry now that I can't. But again, report back to me. I'd love to know how it goes. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes, links to subscribe, and to connect with Chuck on Twitter, Google+, Facebook, YouTube, Vimeo, SoundCloud, the MacVoices blog, the MacVoices Dispatch, our weekly newsletter, and on MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard that helps you do more with your Apple tech. Advertising handled by backbeatmedia at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.